about. You know, there's a verse that says you have to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And the more we're in practice, it all winds up in the head here. And if it doesn't work here, it doesn't work. And so a big part of shape is actually a reset of the hypothalamus, which is the brain of the brain. And so that your body can regulate things in the right way. And there's a lady, I forget the name of the book, but Sarah Godfrey wrote a book. And you'll know, I forget the name. But anyways, she had a head trauma. And she's a medical doctor. And it turned out that she learned by treating her head trauma that it affected her whole body in a positive way as she got her brain better. But that transformation, man, I'm telling you, what you guys spoke, you didn't just let that happen. I mean, you had to become a different person in your thinking to become what you are today. And that's what I think I want to just tell you. And, you know, everything's like, get it now, right? And the whole idea that they're even talking about taking dopamine fast because we're so cued into getting instantaneous feedback and from our phones and everything that we are feeding like dopamine into ourselves constantly. And we're almost addicted to like a quick fix on everything. But transformation takes time, and you become a different person. If you're going to play an instrument, you play a piece because you become a different person to play that instrument. And if you become a different person in your stature and if you're in your influence, it's not something you just decide to do. You become a different person. You're being transformed by a renewed mind. When you're being adjusted and taken care of, you're having resets done to make your body work appropriately, to make sure the neurology is working. Listen, it says 10 to the 9th. I think that's 1 billion times of information per second is coming in from your body to your brain. Your body's perceiving itself. You have inputs and you have outputs, but your body's constantly perceiving itself. And if that's working right, it takes care of itself. If it doesn't work right, you got imbalances. So that brain being transformed by a renewed mind, getting reset in your thinking, getting reset in your foods, getting reset as you're adjusted. I mean, that's a thing that just makes your neurology work good. Well, very proud to introduce you to Dr. Andrea. So happy to be able to work with her just beyond words. And she's going to blow your mind with some ideas, but talk about being transformed by a renewed mind. That's what she's going to probably hit on.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so just like we've been hearing, and I'm going to address the stress and emotional component. So just like we all know, food changes our chemistry in our bodies, our thoughts and words do the same. And Jesus actually says it. He says what we put in our mouths is important, our nourishment, but what comes out is even more important. So these have huge effects in the day and outgoing further, even to further generations. So I'm just going to share, when we were growing up, Mom and Dad had us do a little experiment where we got some seeds that we were able to plant in containers, and they had us write some words on them. And so we wrote some with positive and uplifting words, and then others we put negative and degrading words. And we kind of got to watch as these seeds either sprouted or we got to watch the growth of them through the next few weeks. So it was interesting at a young age, I guess, to see it. So the ones that had the positive, uplifting words were thriving and growing, whereas the other ones with the negative words showed little signs of growth. And the ones that maybe had sprouted were very small, much weaker in structure, and they just quickly regressed. They didn't get past a certain point. So just our words have so much of an impact in everything we're doing. And our thoughts and stressors play a major role in our health. So they actually change our gut, our microbiome in our body, which is our defense mechanism against disease. It changes our blood inflammatory biomarkers. And it also changes water structures, which we have a cool picture. I don't have it to show, but you can look it up, and look up the water structures, and you can see the growth of their changes on them. And some of them are beautiful and flourishing, and those are the positive words. And then others have negative emotions maybe attached to it, or negative words, and they're just very weak and limp water structures. So in knowing that how much of that changes, our bodies are made up of 70% water. Our brains are 75% water, our blood is 83%, and our heart is 79% water. So with the effect that we know it has on our words and thoughts have on us and water, and that we're composed of over half water, we want to be careful in what we're saying to ourselves and saying to others. And another thing that we know, stress and emotions also have a role in brain activity. And we've seen studies where it will show the MRIs and brain activity shifts when an emotion or thought comes up. And we actually have tools that have been shown to decrease that brain activity. So you can kind of decrease the charge of certain emotions. So we know that in order to heal, we need to work on managing and reducing and removing stress from our environment. So when you're stuck in a fight or flight, stuck in stress, you can't get well. And in the book, The Deepest Well by Dr. Harris, she talks about adverse childhood experiences and the impact it has on childhood growth, development, and even long-term health. So we're even seeing this research done, and that was years ago, but we're just seeing what an impact that makes in so many ways. So in order to get out from that spot, you have to give your body a balance, and you've got to balance out the nervous system to start healing. You can't do it if you're just stuck in that stress. And we know with SHAPE, we know stress creates inflammation, and inflammation is not good in any aspect of our body or environment. So we want to make sure that we're making a shift out of that environment that we became sick in. You can't heal in that same environment that you were sick in. That's showing that your body's requesting a change. So how many are emotional eaters, or eat out of boredom, or even stressed eaters? Because for a lot, yeah. So for a lot of us, food is it's an addiction, and it's a way to fill a bigger void. So we've got to figure out what's that void that we're trying to fill. Why are we not getting that? Why are we not filling it somewhere else? So you have to get to a point where you're eating to live and not living to eat. And I think that's a big paradigm shift, when you're realizing you're making the conscious choice of when you're eating and what you're eating, instead of it ruling your life in a way. Another big important thing is you want to make sure you establish your why. I think that was even brought up over here. You've got to come in, you've got to have your goals ready and understand that your why power is going to be way greater than your willpower. Because your why, you're always going to be able to come back to your why. So when we are starting this journey to a better life, we have to take into account the body, mind, and soul. So once you have a good why in place, it makes it easier to stay on track with it. You're going to always come back to that. They always say long-term weight loss is a balancing act of physical, mental, and emotional dynamics. And actually, so Dr. Frisch, the founder of SHAPE, says it's important to understand the difference between these three things. So he said you need to know the difference between eating from happiness versus eating to gain happiness, eating to regain or preserve health versus eating with disregard of health, and eating due to physical hunger versus eating to fill emotional hunger. So when you're hungry and you're just kind of looking, maybe it's out of boredom, maybe it's out of stress, take a moment to kind of evaluate why am I hungry in this moment? Maybe you just had a meal and you're kind of grazing and trying to figure out what's next, and maybe just evaluate, what am I trying to fill here? What am I avoiding? What am I doing in place of? So in saying that, as we come across different stress in our life and as we need to manage it, we also need to have some outlets for it. So everyone needs to have an outlet that whether you put your words down on paper, whether you take a walk, whatever you're doing, you want to make sure you've got an outlet for stress. It's always better to have it out than in. And if you have it in, you don't get it out, it's going to create inflammation in all areas of your body. So we want to share a few ideas with you guys about some different outlets. And we're going to go over journaling, breathing exercises, and neuro-emotional technique. So we have a video. Thea is going to get up here and share with us, but she's not. So we have a video that Thea made about journaling that we'll pull up here, and I'll go over the others.
I wonder if you want to go to another point of the video.
Oh, okay. No, you're fine. Let me know when you're ready. So we'll go over mindful breathing. So anything with the mindful breathing, you want to make sure it's a deep and slow breath. So one method that works really well is the 4-7-8 method. And when we're able to do this, I'll walk you through that in a minute, but when we're able to do this, it's activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which allows our body to go from that stressed out fight or flight down into the rest and digest, relax. I'll finish this one. So the 4-7-8 method is where you pause for a minute and you inhale 4 seconds. You want to inhale through your nose for 4 seconds, hold it for 7, and then you exhale for 8. And it almost recenters your body. You can feel like a shift once you do it, and they suggest you do it a couple times. Or Some people will talk about box breathing and different methods, but the 4-7-8 is a really easy one to remember. So in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. And, all right, we'll share this real quick.
Journaling is overall a really good habit to build. I'll journal on other journals, but this is the journal I mostly journal in. It's a lot of journals. So it's a 5-year journal. So basically, I have 5 years to write down, and every day I have a part that I'll write down what I did that day, a high or a low, or whatever, and then I can do it the next year and see back to that day. Journaling, it can reduce stress. Whenever stuff is going on, like I have a fight with a friend or fight with family or just anything, stuff at school that just creates stress on me, I write it down. And I can read through it and say, oh, I could have dealt with that better, or I could have avoided that. I didn't need to get into it or whatever. That's just one benefit. Secondly, writing is just an amazing habit to get into. You can, it boosts your vocabulary, and it can just make your mind work. And especially, it makes your mind think, like when you miss the day, you have to go back and think, oh, did I do that day or the day before? And then it's harder because your brain working. But really, that's just 2 things, and there's a lot. I love journaling now. It's just, I do it before bed, and it gets my mind clear and just in a relaxed state. What's also cool, we figured out I'm going to be finishing this when I graduate, or that year, so that would be cool.
So Leah made that for one of her, it was a speech class, is that right? So something she had to present or persuasive, so she decided to do it on journaling and showed us the video afterwards. So she had some points here, and I'll just go over them. So journaling reduces stress, and for a lot of us, and for her specifically, she's in middle school. So she's just saying how she needs that as an outlet. And she says here, when I journal, it gives me this relief, just what I need for middle school. So it's great for anyone of all ages, and I think it helps for us to put our thoughts down onto paper, and it kind of flushes out what we're thinking, and it gets us to evaluate things. And even we were talking on the emotional side, sometimes you don't know what you're feeling in a moment, but you can kind of spit it all out on paper and reflect back on it and almost grow your vocabulary of emotions, because there's a 3 that many of us know, and that we don't reach further from that most of the time. So it's sad, mad, and glad. And a lot of times people have trouble identifying any emotion outside of that. Another thing she was saying is that it strengthens the immune system. So some studies show that journaling offers physical benefits with those battling disease such as asthma and arthritis. Research suggests people who use writing to better understand their emotions get the most benefit. So just kind of what we were saying, to expand on your vocabulary in that. It's fun to keep track of things. And then, so she shared the 5-year journal in the beginning of it, and it's just a few lines that you get to write in, but the fun thing is that we all are doing that currently. Our whole family has a 5-year journal, all probably started at different times. And I think Dad probably has 3 that he's filled out at this point. So it's fun to see that, be able to go back and reflect on what's been going on. All right, so we covered journaling and the breathing exercises, the 4-7-8 method. And now I'm going to go and introduce a little bit of what neuro-emotional technique is. So with NET, neuro-emotional technique, I want you guys to understand that emotions don't live in your head. They live in your neurology and your physiology. So emotions are stored in our body as neuropeptides. And this creates a physiological response that we feel when we get a little anxious. You might feel it in your gut or your chest. So you're feeling your emotions. You don't just think your emotions. And actually the founder of chiropractics back in 1895, said that 80% of people's issues were from mental, emotional stress. So it's not just a new thing, it's been going on for quite some time. And we just need an outlet for it. So just to show you guys how the physiologic response works, I'm going to share a little example. So if you guys will play along with me, you can close your eyes or you can just follow along. So pretend there's a large plate of lemons sitting in front of you. Now imagine yourself picking up a big wedge of the lemon. You smell the citrus. Now squeeze some of the lemon juice into your mouth and bite into the rind. So is anyone's mouth watering thinking about a lemon? Okay. So you didn't have to bite into the lemon to still get that same reaction. Your body knew what the lemon tasted like, and so it had that physiological response to that memory of a lemon. So that's what NET is working to get through. So we're pulling up these physiological responses of emotions that we've had in the past. And so our body should return to a balance, to a homeostasis state after any stressful event. But there's times where an emotional response isn't fully processed through in the moment, and it can lead to further, later on, triggers or conditioned responses of that emotional pattern when a similar situation arises. So that's kind of why something that shouldn't be blown out of proportion maybe now is getting blown out of proportion, and it could be something that happened back when you were a child. So when we're working with neuroemotional technique, we're re-engaging the physiological response and making a correction through that. So it provides the opportunity for the body to finally release that stored emotion and get rid of the response to it. So an NET correction is done using meridians of the body, which all meridians are connected to different organs. And every organ is related to hundreds of emotions. So these organs all communicate via meridian system. So it kind of goes through Chinese medicine. So whenever you're experiencing an emotion, it affects an organ. And the immune system follows your emotional state. So maybe you're in a time of high stress and you just find that you keep getting sick or you keep getting a runny nose, a cough, they can't kick, whatever. That will lead to, your body's in that stressed out state, so you need to clear it. So, all right, so wherever the organ meridian runs, could potentially develop an issue. And we know that because emotions change chemically, our structures. So I'll give an example. So let's say you've got feelings of grief or sadness. That's going to pertain to our large intestine and our lungs. And those meridians specifically are on our thumb and our first finger. They run all the way up the arm, and the lung stops here, and the large intestine goes up into the mouth, or onto the face. So if that meridian, if you have an issue in that meridian specifically, you could encounter wrist pain, elbow pain, shoulder pain, any physical pain, or visceral somatic pain. So you'd want to clear that. So it could express itself through physical pain, but it could be relating back to an emotion or a stressed event. So if you think about emotions like an email thread, every emotion dates back to an earlier time in your life. So just like we were saying, it might be blown out of proportion now, it might relate back to something when you were 5 as a child. So during an NET session, we can see if there's actually an original event that's causing today's stress. And then we go back and we clear the physiological response. So it's like deleting an email thread where we're deleting the physiological response to it. We're going back to the very first email and we're saying, all right, we're done with that response. So the memory of it is still there, but the reaction in your body has been removed or neutralized, we'll like to say. So there's a few things that we can do even at home to kind of work on clearing these things, and I'll just go through this real quick. So it's a technique that we call FAST, so first aid stress technique. And it's a way you can clear emotions at home, and you do this by holding the pulse points on your thumb side. So these are all meridians through here. And so I'll show you real quick here. Well, either way, it's easy. So when you're clearing these, you're putting your fingers on these meridian points. So we've got the governing vessel, we've got the fire meridian, which hosts like feelings of feeling lost, abandonment, vulnerable. Then we've got our wood, which is liver, gallbladder. That's going to be anger and resentment. And then we've got water, which is fear, paralyzed will. And these are all connected with organs as well. And then on your right-hand side, I'll walk through this in a minute, but up here you've got your governing vessel, conception vessel, which goes along with feelings of shame, guilt, embarrassment. And then you've got metal, which is going along with grief and a feeling of stuckness, a sadness, cloudy thinking. And then we've got earth, which is low self-esteem, over-concern, worry, disgust, nervousness, and these are just to name a few. And then on the fire meridian, so fire's on both sides, so again, like that feeling of vulnerable, lost, deserted, all that stuff. Oh, here, hold this real quick. So at home, what you can do then to kind of like work through some emotions, and it's really great to work through with kids, or maybe you can't put into words what you're feeling in your body. But what we suggest is that you cover the pulse points on your hand like this, and you just lay all the fingers down nicely, and then you place your hand right over your forehead. So these are our neuro-emotional points on our forehead. So as you connect the circuit, you're completing a circuit, and you kind of breathe through that a few times, and you might feel a shift, you might feel like you need to take a big sigh or yawn, and then you would move to the next side and just kind of clear some emotions. And the idea is, without pinpointing an original event, you can do this at home on your own and try to clear those physiological reactions. So if you're even sitting in traffic and like the day's got you all worked up, you can just kind of sit there and work through it. And then, so NET and then FAST that I just introduced you to is a tool that can help improve many behavior and physical conditions by finding and removing the neurological imbalances related to unresolved stress. So we're always trying to get to that earliest dated email and get rid of it. So I just want to leave you two with this. So anyone doing shaping, anyone thinking about it or going through any chronic, anything chronic, just be patient. This may take longer than you would like, but know that it is possible. On the way, avoid judging yourself and the ongoing expression of our addictions. The healing process can often be invisible at times, but trust that it is happening. And with that, we've got our next Shape Warrior speaker, Tony.